Okay, so welcome everybody. Good evening and welcome to Living Your Best During the Pandemic with Advanced Metastatic, Chronic or Non-Curable Cancer, Supporting Quality of Life Throughout the Cancer Journey. My name is Sheena Clifford. I'm joining you from Wellspring, Calgary. I am so pleased you could join us tonight for Dr. Rob Rutledge's session on finding peace, meaning, and healing. We acknowledge that we live, work, and play on traditional territories in Alberta. Of the many First Nations treaties, 6, 7, and 8, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries, and the gifts provided by elders and knowledge keepers. Living Your Best is a collaboration with CancerControl Alberta, Wellspring Calgary, and Wellspring Edmonton. Together, we are offering this event. We're hoping and planning on offering you a different speaker more frequently, every 2 months, so that we're thinking about potentially the next speaker being in November. We ask that you support maintaining confidentiality, since not everyone has shared their cancer diagnosis with others. A few pieces of Zoom housekeeping before we start. So at either the bottom or top of your screen, you will see icons for video, audio, and chat. To optimize sound, we will have everyone muted throughout the presentation. Once we mute you, you will need to unmute yourself on your end when it's time. If you have any technical challenges, please let us know. Teresa's going to include her contact information in the chat for you to contact direct. Zoom is compliant with Canadian data protection and has a privacy policy, which you can view on their website. This program will be recorded for the purpose of sharing with you and others that can't join us this evening on Wellspring Calgary's YouTube page. The Q&A at the end, where you'll have a chance to talk to Dr. Rutledge, will not be recorded. There will be a question and answer segment following the presentation. At the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon that looks like a speech bubble that says chat. You can click on that icon at any point during the session and enter any questions you may have. I'll be watching for that. If you'd like your question to remain anonymous, please check off the anonymous box before sending in your question. And as we mentioned, we will be turning off the recording towards the end of the session, and you can chat with Dr. Rutledge directly without being recorded at that time. We hope you enjoy tonight's program and we welcome your feedback. We do have an evaluation poll that will launch at the end of the presentation, and we'd love you it literally takes a minute or two. We'd love you to fill it in and give us some feedback so we can continue to provide speakers that are relevant and meaningful. We also will be sending you resources that may be of interest to you following the session by email, and so that you know how to connect from here. Just a quick note, CancerCare Alberta reduces the impact of cancer on all Albertans and provides expert care and support for patients from their first symptom to survivorship. Their goal is to be a leader in cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment, survivorship, and palliative care, all on a foundation of world-class research. In terms of Wellspring, there is a Wellspring Calgary and Wellspring Edmonton. Every day, 58 Albertans will hear the words, "You have cancer," and 1 in 2 of us will hear these words in our lifetime. We are a registered charity. We offer programs and services free of charge that meet the emotional, social, and restorative needs of people living with cancer, their caregivers, and their families. So with all that being said, I welcome you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I want to provide a huge warm welcome to Dr. Rob Rutledge, who is a great friend of us at Wellspring. And he's joining us from across the country. So I'm going to turn it over to him to tell you a little bit about himself. Thank you, Dr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Sheena and Teresa and Marilyn and Edmonton, and to the people that made this possible. I am in such good space right now. I'm just like so happy and excited to present to such a wonderful group of people who are willing to empower themselves. And one of the hopes that I have from this talk is that I facilitate in some way that feeling in each and every one of you. So you have this kind of sense of confidence, this sense of knowing that you're on the right path, that you're doing the right thing for yourself. And I think that's one of the key components of doing exceptionally well on the cancer journey. So hats off for each of you doing this, listening to this presentation. I think that sends a real message when you are willing to take care of yourself, when you're willing to reach out, when you're willing to learn about what you can do to facilitate healing. That's the first step in the process. And so really hats off to each and everyone for you being here. I welcome you to chat your questions. I won't address them during the presentation, but we'll address them afterwards. I'm going to launch my PowerPoint presentation here and get to some of the slides. Hopefully you can still see me in the corner of the screen as we go. Okay, so this is your living your best with advanced metastatic chronic non-curable cancer. And when we find peace and meaning on the journey, when we can kind of get into that deeper space that I'm in right now, it really does facilitate kind of the physical healing. And I want to be able to manifest that for you, help you facilitate your own healing journey. I'm going to start out by telling you a bit of the story. This is actually 35 years in the making, this particular presentation. It started out in the 1980s as a medical student, University of Toronto, very hard-nosed scientific medical school. And I yearned for something much deeper. And off the shelf came the book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Dr. Bernie Siegel. And Bernie introduced me to the idea that there are certain attributes, attitudes, and actions of people who do exceptionally well, or who, what I call the remarkable cancer survivors. And so we're talking to people today who have advanced or chronic, oftentimes it's chronic because you can live for so long with a incurable cancer. But I first read about this in medical school. He called them his exceptional patients. I take exception to that because I think most people can do way better than expected, for instance. But he was talking about the people who did exceptionally well, whose tumors melted away with treatment, who got through very difficult treatment, who undergone spontaneous remission. And recently I was on Bernie's radio show, and we actually interviewed him as part of our podcast as well. And he's just full of story after story after story of how people made those changes in their lives. The person who moves to Colorado because they're not happy in their circumstance, or the person who changes their job, makes these kind of radical shifts in their lives and then does exceptionally well, like does way better than anyone could have predicted. And so Bernie introduced me, and I became obsessed with how is that we can facilitate deep healing, transformation on the journey. And one of the great paradoxes of Bernie's teaching is he said that people, the remarkable cancer survivors, or his exceptional patients, no longer view recurrence of cancer or even death as a failure. Right? So even though I would like each and every one of you to do exceptionally well and really have that longevity and great quality of life and so on, his remarkable survivors didn't put their attention there. They put their attention into the things they could control. And that was the first kind of aha and paradox of it. I mean, Bernie would also say these people did their work. They were able to accept their diagnosis. And I'll talk about that as well. And the other one that really he hit home on, which is the first word in the title, is love. That capacity to really love yourself and to really care for yourself. I think it's an incredibly important first step, foundational piece of going to that kind of soul level and really wishing yourself well. So that was the introduction to that, to my journey. And then this is one of the next books chronologically. So Alistair Cunningham is a research scientist, Princess Margaret Hospital, who's also a cancer survivor. So colon cancer spread to lymph nodes, who did exceptionally well, had his own kind of spiritual transformation, during the original treatment. And now he runs kind of a 7-level healing journey program and really gets into the deeper spiritual aspect of care. Now, I'm quoting this book, Can the Mind Heal Cancer? Because Alistair did it in a scientific way. He measured people who on average had a predicted 1 year to live. So these people who had the metastatic incurable cancers, and he looked to see how involved they were in their own healing, right? Were they meditating? Were they journaling? Were they, spending time contemplating? Were they doing the psychological work? And what he found was the people who were at the highest level of involvement lived 3 times longer on average than those who had the least involvement. And a couple of his patients were alive and completely well 20 years later. So metastatic breast cancer, the bone result to endometrial cancer, they're still kind of sending him Christmas cards after this study. So, and Alistair also pointed to this, the remarkable attributes. So acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is being able to see the truth for what it is as your starting point. And a corollary for each of you is no matter where you are in a kind of psychological space or emotional space, that's okay. That's your starting point. You start fresh from there. You grow from that space. So acceptance, there was authenticity or autonomy, meaning you listen to that deep part of yourself that's going to guide you on your journey. And lastly, the last A is action. The people who were in high involvement took action in their process. In 2014 or so, Kelly Turner produced this book called Radical Remission. She didn't call it spontaneous remission because, like many of us, we don't believe that it's just spontaneous. There's actually a transformation, a radical change in a person's attitude and belief and how they take care of themselves and so on that helps facilitate the kind of miraculous part of it. But Kelly Turner, through U Berkeley, decided to interview people who had undergone a spontaneous remission or radical remission, did all of these interviews and again found 9 factors that were consistent amongst all those radical remission survivors. And again, you're going to start to see this same pattern of people really taking control of their health, really being proactive. And then not only that was kind of the science side, the logical side, but there's this kind of intuition side that's like listening to your gut, listening to that inner self who really wants you to heal and grow. And then when that happens, then there's these practical things that happen. The diet gets much better. These people use herbs and supplements, but I would put a caution and say there's no one herb or supplement that does the trip. They release the suppressed emotions, promoted positive emotions. So they're doing the deeper psychological work. They're embracing social support. They're finding the deeper purpose to live, and they're deepening their spiritual connection. So that was very common amongst these folks. The 10th factor, which he didn't write in the book, is actually exercise, that the kind of the physical side of this. And it's partly because they were doing it anyways. And then most recently, so I've yet to read this book, but I've been listening now to Dr. Jeffrey Redinger's YouTube talk. So this is fresh off the press, 2020. And so he's an MD, a psychiatrist, went to divinity school in Princeton. And from 2003, he's been studying people who undergo spontaneous healing. And again, he doesn't like the word spontaneous. So he's the kind of the science behind that. And his view of the pillars of health are, he says, healing your immune system, healing your nutrition, healing your stress response, and healing your identity. So the last one's a much more deeper psychological, spiritual aspect. And I don't think it's actually the immune system, because to me as an oncologist, that has kind of particular pathways within the body. I think there's something what I would call the healing potential, because it could be mediated through the immune system. It could be mediated through a kind of greater consciousness that influence the physical health of the body. So again, when you set up the conditions and you live from that center of love and peace, that helps the miraculous express itself. So what do I want you folks to take home tonight? What's the take home points in terms of what you can do to facilitate that kind of deep sense of healing, prolonged longevity. How is it that you can do this? What are the take homes? One, I'd say integrating the best from what the conventional medical system has. And thank you, CancerControl Alberta, for sponsoring this talk. I truly believe in the strength of science. I mean, heck, billions and billions of dollars are being invested in research every year. And you never know that your cancer could come onto that kind of targeted therapy and you could get that home run, live for decades scenario. So hopefully that's happening. And so it's a combination of the conventional system and then empowering yourself levels of body, mind, and spirit. The second thing is the remarkable cancer survivors do the work, right? You're coming to listen to this talk, but it's like, it's almost like a way of life in terms of the transition of really taking care of yourself and manifesting the best of yourself in that circumstance. So doing the work. So it's not just the practicality, not just the content, but how you do it. I really think that when it's with the right attitude of a deep sense of love and peace and caring and meaning, that has a much more powerful influence on your health than making those decisions out of a sense of fear. So I really want to emphasize it's the kind of two wings of the bird: content plus process and attitude. And lastly, I'd say the take-home point is the truth is you can profoundly influence your health and happiness. There's no guarantees here, but really by doing these things, no matter where you are in your journey, you can actually make a difference. Okay. So what am I going to talk about? What's the overview? Well, you see it here because I'm trying to give you an overview from kind of start to finish in terms of the healing journey and what might really make a difference for you. The first one is being clear about your goals, being clear about your vision. So I'm going to ask you, you're listening to the seminar, what is that you want to manifest? What is it people who have an incurable cancer want in the long term? And it's more than potentially just increasing your longevity or, having that kind of fantastic recovery. So that's a great start, but I think there's more that you may aspire for. You may want to feel better emotionally, right? All the kind of unknowns of the future and the distress, the social connections, your worries about others, et cetera, et cetera. It can be very stressful to have that diagnosis. And how can you return home to a sense of peace and fulfillment and meaning? How can you manifest that? So I want to kind of get you thinking about how that might happen. The other thing I would say is that people want to be able to function better. They want their brains to think more clearly. They want to have more energy. They want to be able to do the things they love to do. So I'm hoping this will also be part of your goal. Interestingly, you may see your journey as an opportunity, like Bernie's exceptional cancer patients. It's a catalyst or an opportunity to facilitate that kind of deepest psychological and spiritual manifestation or transformation. So think about that so that you are direct around that. You are purposeful in terms of your goals. I say that partly because one very important element in this whole process for me is to be clear about setting your intention. And I'm going to offer you my own process in terms of intention, because I think it's so important that we humans have this incredible capacity to manifest a kind of within the world, especially around the psychological and spiritual aspects of this. So in the morning, this morning, for instance, I got up and I actually have a heart rate variability monitor. I have a little clip that goes on my ear and it's set up to my phone. I can actually watch my kind of stress levels. And so for the first 10, 12 minutes, I'm actually practicing a relaxation technique. I'm doing that longer, slower, smoother out breath. And also kind of breathing through my heart, a sense of gratitude. So I'm really trying to settle down my nervous system, mindfulness, breathing. And we can talk about the meditative process, but this is important for me. So mindfulness, number one. Number two is what I would call kind of a prayer, maybe. I mean, I say it in a kind of a secular sense, but I'm kind of like I put my hands up as a kind of a symbol saying, please guide me, please help me. Whatever's highest within myself, let my life be helpful. Let me be beneficial to people. Let me be loving and kind and clear thinking. So I'm really kind of praying hard as the next phase, like being willing to be an instrument of the kind of highest good in situation. And whatever you think of or feel as highest within yourself, you can kind of raise to that kind of level. So I'm asking, I'm praying, I'm inviting in. Super important, super important to invite in whatever's best, right? However you visualize that. And then lastly, I do like a little prostration, putting my forehead on the floor, my hands up. It's kind of like a feeling of submitting, like I can't control this, and therefore I'm willing to serve whatever's highest in the circumstance, including trying to give the best talk possible right now. So that's setting of the intention. So you can ask yourself, what are your highest values, right? What's the best self? What is your best self? How do you want to live in this world? How do you have this spirit, you have this opportunity to connect. How is it that you want to manifest your spirit in this world? So think about that side of it. And then not only do I do it as a ritual, so the ritual happens in the morning through practicing mindfulness and meditation first, and then the kind of sense of prayer and so on. But I can do it last thing in the day, different ways of doing kind of a ritual. Secondly, I look for that opportunity because I know that there are some situations that are stressful for me. And so when I go into a stressful situation, before I open that door, before I make that phone call or whatever it is, talking to a difficult person or whatever it is, I'm going to try to remember what's most important, remember my goal as to how I want to be in that circumstance. So you practice going into a difficult situation. And lastly, we humans are going to lose it sometimes. We're going to feel stressed or upset. And so when you recognize, oh, geez, I'm really kind of out of sorts here, feeling awful, not being my best self, is this kind of memory. Okay, now let me come back home. So in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the turbulence, kind of come home to yourself. And because this is a great Wellspring talk, I am actually going to ask folks to do this this exercise with me. So I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to ask you now in a way that feels right for you. We're going to actually do just a little 3 to 4 to 5 minute meditation, setting of intention. So pull yourself, if it's comfortable, if it's possible and appropriate, pull yourself into a stronger sitting position. You can also do this lying. There's no problem with that at all. But for those who are sitting, a sense of strength, a sense of solidity, sense of taking your seat in some way or form. And bring your attention now to the kind of physicality of your body, the sense of being grounded to the earth, to the weight of the feet on the floor, the weight of the hands on the knees, weight of the sitting bones. And bring your attention to now your backbone and that kind of sense of solid spine, the physicality of your body. Bring your attention to your heart center. Be curious now. Use the curiosity muscle to look to what you feel at the heart center. And you may feel some sense of warmth or openness or vulnerability, maybe rawness there. And that really reflects our humanity. We are solid, strong-spined beings with an open, warm heart. And take a breath and just breathe at whatever rate is best for you. And imagine breathing in a sense of calm and peace. And on out breath, relax and release and let go. So a sense of just releasing into the moment, letting go of any sense of anything else. So coming back home to yourself. Inviting in calm and peace, And releasing on the out breath. Stress, let the kind of stress drain out of you. Now we're going to warm up our hearts, the sense of connection, sense of compassion, sense of caring. So bring your mind to the heart level. Allow yourself to feel those emotions. Think of somebody that you love, maybe a pet, or maybe at a different time in your life when you're really connected, maybe as a young person, or maybe when your kids were young. And open up your heart. Allow that kind of shining warmth to radiate as you think of that loved one. Now think of somebody in your life who's suffering in some way or form. And again, allow your heart to warm and send out that sense of wanting them to heal in some way, whatever is best for them. So you see somebody maybe close to you or from a distance. You just wish them well. Your heart opens again. You're kind of opening your heart energy with that warm, healing energy that's permeating throughout your chest. Think of the people who've been diagnosed with cancer in Alberta. Think of the people on the call right now, Zoom call. And again, you have this kind of limitless compassion, limitless loving energy that can kind of radiate outwards to everybody. Expand that again to everybody in Canada. And then to anybody who's suffering anywhere for any reason. So you're a being of light. You're radiating outwards, limitless healing energy. And recognize that as you do this, you're actually sending that same healing energy through your body. You're like a being of light. It's permeating every cell in your body, going into the psyche, into the emotional body, into your spirit. And from that space of that limitless, beautiful healing energy, set an intention for yourself. How is it that you need to grow? What is it that you need to heal? How can you manifest your best self? Just let yourself be guided into the best of whatever's best for you. And release any sense of visualization now, coming back home to a sense of being grounded in your body, connected with the earth, physicality of your spine. Next out breath, allow your mind to expand into a sense of space in your room, sense of transformation, healing, loving energy, and recognize that your good human heart is connecting those two elements of your life together, earth, pragmatic advice, and that kind of sense of possibility, transformation, healing energy. And I'll just finish off with the chimes. Yes. Staying open to possibility of transformation and listening to your heart. When you see what has happened here is you've had a relaxation response at the minimum, and you've come back into your wise and compassionate brain. And now you're receptive, you're open, you're able to listen with your intuitive heart as to what's right for you. And I'm going to offer a lot of advice here, but you're going to know in your heart what makes sense, where you want to explore, where's your next step by being in the state and less so in the kind of stressed, irritable brain. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. So practice. Set your intention. If you don't know what to pray for, then pray to learn how to pray, and it doesn't have to be to God. It's whatever is highest for you. Okay. So this is the empowerment piece. You want to empower yourself with information, and the information can be around the medical system and having that language there. It increases your sense of well-being and control just by understanding. It can help you make better decisions, connect with the doctors. What you're learning right now is how to empower yourself in non-medical ways. And ultimately, I'm a very pragmatic person. I want you to know what is that you can control and what is that you can't control. And you really just want to let go of the things that you can't control and focus in this moment right now, this precious moment, because this is where healing happens. This is where the transformation happens. And there's an incredible amount of life to be lived in this moment, in the things that you can control. And there's where your power is. So how do you get that information? So just from a very pragmatic perspective, and you've probably been at it for a while, the Wellsprings of the world, have different types of resources. Sometimes the cancer centers have a librarian. The Canadian Cancer Society has an excellent website and information number that's there. And we'll share these slides afterwards. The not-for-profits of your particular type of cancer often have these very good overviews, and they actually even break it down into the non-curable categories and so on. So, and you network, you come to these talks, you listen to your heart, you ask questions, you do your reading, you try to look for the validated resources that can really empower you. Okay, so then recognize, I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of the medical system because there's a lot of power, a lot of opportunity to be had there. It's a 20-minute talk, probably half an hour talk by itself of developing a strategy, engaging your team. Your team can be your family members, friends, but also the team within the medical system, right? The nurses are often a fantastic resource. The physician is the one who can really direct you in terms of your situation. So you're developing that strategy, you're learning, you prepare for your appointments, you get your questions ready, you know who's going to record information, right? When you're at the doctor's office, your oncologist's office, remember that you're the most important person in the room, right? We are here to serve you. This is what it's all about. And you need to be very clear and pragmatic about that, because then you're more likely to advocate for yourself and see the situation as it is. Learn what you need to know. For instance, if you're on a new medication that has particular side effects, you need to know what those side effects are, how bad they have to be before you do something, what you need to do, and who to call at 3 a.m. And then lastly, to advocate for yourself. Like, if you're feeling like, I'm not quite sure, this doesn't make quite sense, you need to make that phone call, right? Get the nurse to call you back or the doctor to call you back. And again, because you're the most important person. So the medical system, it's a 3-hour conversation actually if you get into it, but you really just want to say, how is it that you personally can get the best care in your situation? And then keep working towards that. Okay, I will touch base because a lot of people do explore the complementary medicines. And I'd say, first of all, there's no one home run, no shark cartilage, no SCIAC that's right for everybody. I really think that what I'm offering you in this talk can really, it really sets the conditions for, making the incredible healing in your life. So I'd say start with the healthy habits that we're going to talk about here. And always, always, always look for the expert. Look to do the research. Use your logical mind. Be scientifically minded. Like, what's the quality of the evidence? How do I know that's true? And then you weigh that against, you do that homework, you do that work, and then something within you, your gut, your intuition starts to guide you towards what's right. So it's both, it's an and both phenomenon. Tell your doctor what you're taking, especially if it's anything by mouth or IV, for instance. And then I would say, don't forego the proven treatments. Again, each to his own, but the medical system has a lot to offer typically. Okay. I've been talking for, I don't know, too long. So actually just for now, kind of get up if you can, if it feels right for you, and maybe just rub your belly. Just rub your belly a little bit and take your eyes off the computer screen. Right? It's an opportunity to kind of get yourself up Away from sitting too often. Okay. Stretch. Okay. The next level. So I'm getting into this idea that beyond the medical system, first of all, it's to look at your body with the right attitude. Your body is the vehicle that allows you to connect, to allow you to experience, allow you to manifest, right? And so when we recognize that, we want to naturally take good care of our body. And so it's like a diet. A diet is not like, a healthy diet is not like a restriction or you're missing out on the unhealthy stuff. It's that you really so care for yourself that you want this body to be healthy. So you see this organism. So what does this organism need? How much exercise does it need? How does it need to sleep? How do I need to feed this organism? Because it is the vehicle that allows you, to reach out or to give a hug and to receive a hug and to perceive and let your love out. So love your body. That's really important as a first step. Exercise. Again, it's a 20-minute talk. But one of the things I say is that when you do that exercise, and even if it's that you're, in the bed most of the time, just to get yourself up and do a few, sits to stands and some stretches, et cetera, your body continues to adapt with time. And so, especially because it's very symbolic. At first 2-3 minutes of the power walk or the exercise routine, it can be a little bit tougher, like, this feels hard, et cetera. But if you can just get yourself through that part, you're sending a powerful message. You're garnering all that kind of pent up frustration, anger, stress, and you're focusing into something that really makes a difference. And again, I could rave about exercise for a while in terms of how it changes the happy hormones, how it improves brain function, how it sends the molecules that motivate you to connect with other people. It's all there, all these opportunities. What if you don't like to exercise? I heard one good suggestion recently. Well, then just turn on a song that you really like and dance in the kitchen. This is a COVID technique, something from your youth, et cetera. It doesn't matter how you dance. You start out dancing a few minutes each day, you kind of expand it, et cetera. Go for the power walk. You're loving yourself when you're exercising. Again, a long talk, diet. The remarkable cancer survivors are willing to really take care of themselves. And there's lots of reasons why diet can make a profound influence on your health. Again, look for the expert, that nutritionist, the cooking class, those great websites, and do your research. Figure out what feels good for you. I'd summarize: eat food, i.e. not chemicals, mostly plants, not too much. It's a great summary of that. Listen to your body. Right? How do you feel an hour afterwards? How do you feel 3 hours afterwards? I've gone vegan recently. I'm definitely feeling less arthritis and just like more energy. So what we want to do is to reduce or avoid completely the meats, especially the red meats, the sweets, the high sugar scenarios, dairy, refined foods, because if you eat this, it's called nutrient dense. So the calories that you get into your body, you want to have lots of the kind of micronutrients and minerals, et cetera. So those have the antioxidants. So the stuff that you're getting into your system is kind of mopping up the damaging substances. So that's typically means plant-based with some fruits along. And then this is huge. One of the huge concepts is this idea of inflammation or irritation. So when we eat the bad stuff, it irritates our gut, for instance. Those chemicals get released into our body, the kind of chemicals of inflammation or irritation, and they go throughout the body and they cause you to feel worse and all the organ systems not to work as well, including your brain. So you want an anti-inflammatory diet. I'd also say I didn't put it on the slide, but there's a microbiome, this idea that there's 100 trillion bacteria in your gut, and we need them, and we need to kind of feed them, because those are the good bacteria that kind of break down the foods and decrease inflammation and create some micronutrients that we can't produce without them. And so we need to feed our gut. So you got 100 trillion friends in your gut. Low glycemic means not getting your sugar levels to spike. So that if you stay away from the sweet, sugary stuff, then you can add some protein to your meals. You keep your blood sugar levels at that kind of nice, steady level, and that's much better for your brain and your energy and so on. Obviously, healthy fats and fluids. And then we Canadians need vitamin D, 10 plus months per year. The vegans, you'd add your B12. I don't think you need anything more if you got that kind of a nice, varied diet. So super important in terms of your health and happiness. Maintain a reasonable weight. I'd say the best way to make that change, I mean, if you're following a good diet and you're exercising, typically you would, be at least a reasonable weight. It doesn't have to be perfect by any sense. And so I'd suggest that not feeling guilty about where you're at is the best way to make those changes. So you want that kind of self-compassion, and that also entails just a sense of a little bit of discipline on that side. So self-compassion, I'd say throw away your scale. It has nothing to do with the number there. It really has to do with how your body feels. And so I have this image there. So I would take any of these guys as they are right now over their 20-pound less twin who's not exercising. So the exercise is way more important than any number. Sleep. So there's a whole science of sleep hygiene. I think we can go through that as well. So essentially you're creating the conditions in which you're more likely to sleep. Staying in the dark. I believe in napping as well. But again, it's like being the wise mother to yourself, a real sense of kindness that says, what does this human body, this human psyche need kind of from above? I really think we miss out on this last pillar. This is the fifth pillar for me, is practicing a relaxation technique, somewhere where you're letting go of the kind of chattering thoughts, and you're kind of coming back home. You're getting that muscle of bringing your attention back to the here and now, and what I call resetting your stress levels. And I'll get into that in a moment. But really, it's important that to have some activity every day where you allow the nervous system to really settle down and to really regenerate. And that helps with brain function, helps with immune function, helps with energy. It's just, there's so many positive scientific proven benefits of practicing relaxation or meditation. Okay, so the next level, and I'm trying to give this as a kind of overview to kind of prime you into what you might explore further, is thinking about your mind. So healing stress, not to say your life is not going to have stress, but to heal during stress. Reframing the difficult thoughts. Thoughts are often, reframing is related to the core beliefs, the ideas that can cause you unnecessary stress and suffering. We all are going to have emotional energies, whether it's frustration, anger, resentment, et cetera, et cetera. And when we feel those emotions, there's a healthy way to be able to transform the emotional energy that allow the healing. And so one of Kelly Turner's points is to release suppressed emotions and to increase positive emotions. So I'll talk about that shortly. The power of self-compassion. We'll do a technique around that today. And we've already done the setting of the intention visualization. So it's a very powerful, that kind of connection between your intention and consciousness and manifesting something physically. And then ultimately, I also point you towards the same idea of doing the deeper psychological work. Okay, stress training. This is the overview again. So resetting your baseline stress level. So that's what I call the stressometer. Where is your stressometer? Is it up high or is it down low? Where do you run during the day? Do you kind of keep yourself here? Or can you bring yourself down to a lower, healthier level? You're going to have the same challenges throughout the day, but you're going to respond hopefully more likely in your wise and compassionate brain. So again, practicing meditation, super important to start that. You can work with the sudden flusters, flares, stressors, right? Suddenly you're overwhelmed, suddenly you're upset, suddenly you're angry. How do you settle yourself down? And that's, through a breathing technique and to be able to reframe on the spot. So it's another technique you can learn to kind of help yourself. Understanding that stress can be enhancing, actually. You can see stress as your friend. What's your relationship with stress? How do you feel? Like when you feel stressed, are you fighting against that? Or are you understanding that, stress is like a friend who telling you there's something at issue here, something important's at stake. Let's work with this right now. And that thinking that your stress is helpful can actually help you think more clearly. And ultimately, you can go to the source. Like, why are you feeling stressed in the first place? And yes, there are some things that are stressful, like going into a physician's visit because you don't know necessarily what's going to happen. And so that can be stressful. But many other things that we get ourselves wound up with that we can actually settle down by looking at our core beliefs. This is a stress response curve. So the more stressed you get, to a certain point, you're at your maximum. And then if you have even more stress, you kind of can break down, or the system doesn't work as well. And by practicing a kind of breathing technique and settling yourself down in that moment, get yourself to think more clearly and make better decisions. And ultimately, you can teach yourself to get up to this upper curve where when you're seeing a stressful situation, yes, it can be, make you feel worse, but you can actually function better. So you can work with your stress levels and really feel better. I'm going to take you through just a very quick overview of a cognitive behavioral therapy. It's based on David Byrne's book. It's almost 50 years old now, the Feeling Good book. Essentially the idea that our thoughts influence how we feel. If we can change our thoughts in a rational and kind way, we can actually feel better. So again, an opportunity to go to the source of those feelings. And he teaches it as a 3-column technique. You'll see up top is the situation, which is just the raw reality of what's happening. I'm talking, you're listening right now. Is this the raw reality? And then step 1, oftentimes we can be mindful, be able to watch yourself thinking these distressing thoughts, like this is a bunch of garbage or whatever it is. And that distressing thought, then you can work with, because it's causing unnecessary extra suffering, by going into the 2nd column, where we see what happens when we think that way and how it's exaggerated. And ultimately we can reframe, and it starts with a sense of acknowledgement. Okay, so that's how I'm feeling right now. And that's tough. I can see that. Looking from a bigger perspective. So you're using a wise perspective, and you're also being encouraging of yourself. So this is it's almost like there's that wise grandmother voice in your head as well, who can kind of talk you through a difficult situation. That's the kind and rational response. I'd like to do that as an example. So you have a cancer diagnosis and you're self-isolating right now, right? So that's just the truth. That's a smart, well, not totally self-isolating, but it's a smart thing to do, is to kind of minimize the kind of lots of contact, which will minimize your risk of getting COVID, right? So there's some sense of isolation. So that's just the truth, and that's a good decision as I see it. And then you think something on top of that situation. And the thought here is, this is BS. I'm stuck inside and can't do anything. My life is wasting away during COVID. This is totally unfair, right? So, you are in a tough situation, and then you label it with all this kind of extra core beliefs, extra ideas. If you can see yourself thinking this way, especially if you hear yourself swearing in your mind or using exaggerated words like totally, then you can actually start to work through it. So what emotions follow this way of thinking? Well, I think it would be like anger or frustration. How does my body feel? Well, I would have like a stress reaction, and I could feel tired if I let myself go on like that. Is it helpful or harmful? Well, I would say this is harmful. It's you're not feeling better when you start thinking this way. And then ultimately you're asking yourself the question, well, how is it exaggerated or irrational? well, is it 100% bullshit 100% of the time? I can't do anything. I mean, is that, you know, like you're in a coma? Is that what you're saying when you can't do anything? Or could you actually like make a phone call or exercise in your kitchen or whatever? My life is wasting away. Well, you still have your life right now and you can manifest your spirit in your life. This is totally unfair. Well, this is difficult, but I wouldn't call it totally. So you're starting to have this kind of conversation of, oh, I've exaggerated. So then we look to the third column. So we acknowledge the difficulty with a kindness. We look from a bigger perspective, and then we encourage ourselves. And how does that come out? If you heard yourself talking that way, you might say then to yourself, and recognize how my voice is like soft, compassionate. This is frustrating. But it doesn't help to focus on the limitations. I can do things which fulfill me. This is a chance to focus on good things and love, right? So you can always have this opportunity to choose, to let go of the stuff you can't control and to choose within your situation what you can control, focusing on the good things and love. So that's the idea of that one. Okay, just a few more sections in terms of big picture, working with difficult emotions. So, you can have this kind of sense of frustration or anger. In some situations, it's appropriate when the anger comes up, you have to kind of stand up for yourself. No, I don't want that. Or you have to leave the situation, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the source? Is it a thought or is it a real threat? Do you need to take action, right? Sometimes set the boundary, sometimes not. Is it a distorted belief contributing to the emotional distress? Kind of like this is total garbage. Can that belief be reframed? So you're trying to let go of the extra unnecessary, or let go of the second arrow, like you're getting stabbed with the first arrow, which is the life situation. It's like pulling that arrow out and stabbing yourself again when you exaggerate. So can you reframe that? Can you honor your emotions? Right? Allowing the sense of grief or frustration, in the one sense, allowing that to manifest and be there and to flow through you, but not getting caught up with it or exaggerating it, and allowing that to heal itself so that you can then experience much more positive emotions. So you honor them first, allowing them to be there authentically, and also you can manifest the more positive emotions. And then ultimately, it's about letting go of the thoughts of the situation and coming back home to that best self that you want to manifest. Okay, so doing the deeper psychological work. So this is the suppressing the released emotions work, right? So that Kelly Turner is talking about. So you can see a therapist, a journalist, or you can talk to a wise person in your life. You can learn to forgive others. We don't want to carry these grievances and these stresses. It's a poison that you're feeding yourself each day when you're holding on to those grievances for too long. And also kind of forgiving ourselves, being kind to ourselves so that we can kind of come back to that best self. And when you do that, I really think this helps release that healing potential within your life. I'm just going to finish off with a technique of self-compassion. It's really, so Christian Neff started studying this in 2003, and it's really, really good science around kindness towards yourself is the most effective way of making a change. And that kindness is just not like being super lenient. It's like if you were a mother to a child and the child was saying to you, no, Mom, I don't want to go to school. I just want to eat ice cream all day. As a mother, you wouldn't say, no problem, my dear. You would say, well, hon, it's actually healthy for your body to eat vegetables and you'll be happier if you learn in school. So there is some sense of strength and wisdom when you're self-compassionate to yourself. So I want you to think about it right now. Think of a situation in life that is difficult, that's causing you stress. And when you bring that situation to mind, you can actually feel some of that emotional energy. So it's frustration or anger, whatever's happening there. So when you see yourself from kind of observer consciousness perspective, you see yourself there, you start with saying something like, this is a moment of suffering. And if you don't like the word suffering, you can just say something like, this hurts, oh, ouch, or no, this is stressful when I think about this. So you're just, this kind of like the acknowledgement piece again, right? Ouch, this hurts. Number 2 is saying something like, suffering is a part of life. This is the normal human thing that happens to people, right? Or other people feel this way. I'm not alone. We all struggle in our lives, right? So we acknowledge the common humanity. And the third part of it, and you can do this right now, just put your hand on your heart and just a sense of kindness and warmth. This is a kind of self-compassion position. Be kind. And then you say to yourself something like, may I be kind to myself? And there are lots of other things you can say to yourself that can help you through this. What do I hear right now to express kindness to myself? May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I accept myself as I am. Oh, that's a very powerful one. May I learn to accept myself as I am. May I forgive myself. May I be strong. May I be patient. Whatever you need in that situation, since you're asking for that help. Okay, so that's a technique of self-compassion you can use throughout the day. Finish off with another couple topics. One is recognizing that we humans are very connected. There's lots of kind of science around reaching out. And in some sense, we should invest in our key relationships, like the energy of connection, and there's science to this, and we need to take care of ourselves. So it's a kind of and both phenomenon of self-care and connection. I think it's important for us to ask for help and accept help from others, and offer it when you can as well. It's the cycle of life. You know, sometimes you are helping others, sometimes others are going to help you. It's a normal, natural thing. People feel good when they can connect like that. I'd say find a wise person, somebody that you can say to them, listen, I don't want you to correct me or offer me advice. So at the start of the conversation, you preface it so that you're setting the culture within that conversation. Just need you to listen. I just want to get this off my chest. That wise, confident. Create the culture of open vulnerability, right? The authenticity is the healthiest emotional path, right? Allowing yourself to feel what you feel and not getting too caught up in it. And yet being able to see that manifesting itself. And ultimately, it's this kind of feeling of really loving the people in your life, those key relationships in your life, seeing others' interests as your own. Relationships, I really think, are the ground for our spiritual growth. Really, we are in relationship all the time. We're in relationship with others. We're in relationship with the world. We're in relationship with ourselves. And lastly, I would just offer, and it's probably a talk by itself, is that there's a spiritual perspective here. I was listening to a YouTube talk today, and this gentleman, Peter Fenrick from Britain, was talking about all these experiences, like near-death experiences, the end-of-life experiences, the kind of awakening experiences, all these experiences where people recognize that they're more than just the individual body. And oftentimes when they go through that experience, they lose their fear of death completely, right? And we recognize that we're more the consciousness that can watch, that kind of peaceful, positive, loving consciousness than the kind of small individual person. We're both individual and something that's metaphysical. And I encourage you to kind of continue to pursue that, because the remarkable cancer survivors also explore their spiritual life, their spiritual work. I think that completes it. I just want to offer, before we hand over to the Wellspring team here, is that we have a number of programs going. If you're at all interested in what we have to offer, you can just send an email to info@healingandcancer.org, and that will kind of prime you, because some of these events aren't kind of quite listed on our calendar yet. But we are having a Skills for Healing Weekend Retreat, October 17th and 18th, and you're all welcome to join there. So there's no limitations. It's actually being offered by Wellspring. The Wellsprings across the country are offering this particular retreat, and we're going to do some kind of more training. I've given you the talk, now we actually go into the work of learning those techniques. So That's one weekend retreat. It's kind of a 9 to 4, or I guess for you guys it'd be like a 7 to 1 or whatever it is, 7 to 2. We're going to have a spirituality and cancer weekend retreat first week of December. And so that's a much deeper, we have such fantastic co-presenters here that we're going to really delve deep into the spiritual aspects of care. And even right now we have ongoing series. We have a relationships at home series. You can kind of watch all the previous videos. It happens every Friday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And you can go to healingandcancer.org/RAH, like relationships at home. And you can get yourself signed up for that one as well. So, and lastly, just thanks to everyone. Thanks to Wellspring. What an amazing organization that really helps facilitate this deeper type of healing where people can do really exceptionally well. And hats off to every one of you who's watching now. So thanks, folks. It's just such a pleasure to be connected with you all. So we'll stop there, and maybe Sheena or team can read the questions from the chat, and then we can go that way, and people can kind of chat in their questions, and we'll keep the recording button going on that side. And then once the chat questions are done, we'll stop the recording and just have a more informal talk.
So, Dr. Rutledge, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So we have a question about what would you suggest when you are struggling with morning fatigue? So, wanting to get up, but it's just hard.
Yeah. First of all, that's a really tough situation, right? When the body is saying, I need some more sleep. I think it's important to do kind of all the things that I've been talking about in terms of if you can get into a better sleep routine, if you can do a little bit of exercise during the day, if you make sure your diet is healthy, practice relaxation technique, all those things can prime more energy. So we can influence our energy levels. And even, I'm just imagining, even if you did everything like that, you could still feel like, geez, I'm really tired when I first get up in the morning. I think it's one of those scenarios where a little bit of forced exercise or a little bit of kind of getting outside and seeing some light can actually prime the endorphin system. And even doing a little bit of stretching where using some of the core muscles releases the kind of molecules of joy and the kind of motivational molecules. So it's such a paradox to say, well, I'm really tired. I really don't want to get up and do anything. And yet forcing yourself to do that exercise, that stretch, can actually produce the happy hormones and give you that better morning or that better afternoon than you would have had otherwise. So tough love, tough mother love here.
Another question came through about how do folks register for the retreats you shared. So Rob, I responded back that we will share that information in the email that we send with a number of resources, so we can take care of that there. Another comment, Rob, I am trying to alter my diet. I'm on targeted therapy for lung cancer and cannot seem to find any information for nutrition, particularly to those treatments. Any chance you are aware of any good resources? Nutritional info is so difficult and conflicting.
Yes, it is. But I first read the kind of Canada Food Guide, 15 years ago, and I just said, this is so fluffy. As I've reread it though, it really makes sense what they're talking about. And that slide where I kind of outlined what you need to do in terms of diet, I think if you're using those principles, and then I'd always say, well, try to find a nutritionist at the cancer center who can actually spend the time, going over your diet, what's working for you, what doesn't work for you. And so they can really kind of tailor that information much more clearly. I'd say those are some of the big ones. There's also a fantastic organization called Inspire Health, all one word, .ca, that has some good nutritional guidance. Sheena, I don't know if Wellspring has that kind of nutritional expert there as well.
We do. We have our food and nutrition programs, both us and the Wellsprings across the country and in Toronto. So we will definitely include that as well in the email that we send as a follow-up.
Great. Yeah.
Dr. Rutledge, brain fog, is there a breathing technique we could use?
Yeah, so for everyone, brain fog obviously is this kind of feeling confused sometimes, not being able to think clearly sometimes. It's often associated with people who have been through chemotherapy, for instance, especially, you know, if we have an advanced cancer and our energy levels are down, that can also affect how clearly we can think and so on. And there's no kind of best advice around that. I'm just going to give you one idea: is the long, slow out breath, like breathing in, maybe for a count of 3, and then breathing out for about a count of 6. So breathing in and breathing out, and then essentially watching your breath and being curious about your breath. When we do that, we kind of engage the wise and compassionate part of our brain. So one of the things you can kind of control on the spot, because other than kind of diet, exercise, and all kind of creating the conditions and trying to avoid, you know, the extra stressors and those type of things, is actually the breathing technique on the spot will help you engage your wise and compassionate brain, the kind of frontal lobe and so on. So practicing a meditation can help with brain function. But again, it's one of those holistic things where you do all of those things and you're going to bump up your level. And lastly, I would just say, we're all given a certain amount of energy within our life, right? So we have so much energy each day. And so I'd say, be careful about how you spend that energy. Yes, you need time to do the self-care parts of that, and you do that with kind of a loving sense, but recognize that we all have limited energy, and recognize that you want to spend your life in the way that's most fulfilling and meaningful. And so try to avoid the unnecessary things. Like for instance, I wouldn't necessarily watch television news right now. I think it's too distressing and takes away from the kind of sense of peace. And so avoid the things that are draining that critical energy as well, and put your energy into the most important thing, like your relationships.
Dr. Rutledge, thank you. I have TNBC that is metastasized to both lungs, and I have been fighting for 4 years. And first was on the left, had that removed, now just got the news that's in both. I'm so angry, and I have no faith and get back into my diet, spirituality, or anything. So it spread to her lungs.
Yeah. So first of all, let's just recognize and just spend a moment to recognize that this is a really difficult situation, right? So this person is talking about triple negative, which is just how the cancer cells are underneath the microscope, et cetera. And the cancer's got into the bloodstream, and they landed on the lung, and now they've landed on both lungs. And so it's a really difficult point in that person's journey, because that's bad news now. And so it's natural and normal now to feel frustrated and kind of sense of giving up, and, you know, lots of different kind of emotions can come with that bad news. And I think it's very healthy just to be able to honor that at this particular point. It's like grieving. I thought I was going to do better, and bang, darn, I have this, you know, awful news that I have to deal with. So first of all, is to be able to acknowledge and accept that that is really a tough space to be in right now. So on the one hand, you're acknowledging it. And then on the other hand, at the same time, it's an and both phenomenon. You're also saying, what can I do to make the best of what I have? So, you know, you're choosing the psychological, spiritual route. You're investing in your relationships, and, you know, deciding you want to take care of yourself, because those are the most important things. So mourning and being proactive at the same time. So bless you. I hope that's helpful. You know, try to find, you know, that piece of the universe that you can have an influence on, including loving those people closest to you.
And it looks like we might have one last question. If you have an oncologist who you feel is detrimental to your mental health through your cancer journey, is there room within the Canadian health system to request another doctor?
Yes. So, yeah. So if you really kind of, the relationship has broken down, and you either don't trust your doctor or it's like super stressful to work with that doctor, then I really think it's worth working with a different oncologist or a different specialist. And how do you do that? You go to the nurse of that oncologist and say, I want a second opinion or a different doctor. Or you go back to your family doctor and say, this is just not working. Can you please send another referral to the cancer system? I see it, this happens within the medical system, that people do, work with a different physician. So take care of yourself. It's important for you to kind of have the trust that you're getting the care that you should be getting.